I want to go over a feature that's included in CodeRush for Visual Studio that, even though it's seemingly small, is actually quite powerful, and that is the idea of SelectionExpand and SelectionReduce. And basically, I'll try to give a demo of how it works, and then at the end, I'll go over kind of how the bindings are set up. So here you can see I'm on a function. I'm in a string that's being passed in as a parameter to this particular function, and by default SelectionExpand is bound to Control W, and so if I hit Control W, you can see it selects the entire content of the string. If I press Control W again, now I have the double quotes included. If I hit Control W again, then you can see that I have all of the parameters being passed into this function are selected. Control W again, and now the entire line is selected. Control Shift W will reduce the selection, so if I hit Control Shift W, it takes it back down to the parameters, down to the string with the double quotes, and back down to the string. Control Shift W only takes effect if you've expanded the selection with Control W. So this comes in really handy. Another example is down here. You can see this enumerated type is being passed in as a parameter to this function. If I hit Control W, it selects both the type and the value in one keystroke. So if I hit Control W again, in this case, you can see now I've selected the entire contents of the parameters being passed into this function. Control W again, and now I have the entire line. If I keep hitting expanding the selection, you'll notice I hit Control W. Now I have everything up until this local variable. Control W again, I have the entire content of the function. Once again, I have the entire function, and then I do it again, and I have the attribute included. And again, I can Control Shift W to reduce the selection back down. This just comes in invaluable when you're editing code and highlighting text. I mean, I probably do this, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 times a day while I'm editing code. Now, you might say, what if I just want to select a word? Well, then you can actually just use the built-in Visual Studio edit.selectCurrentWord command, and I have that bound to Control-Shift-W. So right now, if I press Control-Shift-W, then I just get the word that I'm on selected. And this is something you want to do all the time as well. So again, Control-Shift-W, I select the actual word I'm on, and then I can just switch over to Control-W and start expanding out the selection. Control-Shift-W for DevExpress only takes effect if I've actually used Control-W to expand the selection. So Control-Shift-W without having done that will just use the Visual Studio binding that I have and select the current word. It also kind of depends on where your cursor is. For example, if I have my cursor out here in the function and I press Control W, I get the entire function selected. If you're up on the class, for example, it'll select the entire class. The other place this comes in really handy is when you're editing HTML. And in this case, so for example, if I hit Control W to expand the selection, it selects the entire element from the open tag to the close. And again, if I hit Control W, it expands it out. Now I have the outer div. So I press Control W again, and I get all of the neighbors to the div, and it basically highlights out to the content of this outer div. Control W again, I get the outer div, and so on. So if I move the cursor out, say next to this div, hit Control W, now I get the entire div with its contents selected. So when you're editing HTML, to be able to just highlight a element with all its contents, this comes in extremely handy. I want to go over the basic bindings. If you go for the DevExpress Selection, Expand, and Reduce, you can go to the DevExpress menu, go to Options, and if you actually go down to Selection and Defining, you can see here's the Selection Reduce and Selection Expand commands, and they're bound to Control W and Control Shift W. It's also bound to the numeric keyboard plus and minus for expanding and reducing, although I tend to always use the Control W, Control Shift W. As far as the Visual Studio, to select the current word, go into the Visual Studio Tools, Options, Keyboard, and then you can go ahead and search for edit.select current word, and you'll see that I have that bound to Control-Shift-W. I'm not sure if this is the default, but that's how I like to have my binding. So this again comes with CodeRush from DevExpress. It's a add-on for Visual Studio that provides all sorts of features, and this selection, expand, and reduce is probably one of my most used and one of my favorites, and one of those sort of I can't live without features. So hopefully this little demo helps out, and take care.